If this Mercury retrograde didn't ruin your technology but absolutely wrecked your emotions, there is a reason. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Kate the Angelic Assassin, and I read the energy, talk to your angels, and tell you exactly what's happening without dressing it up in spiritual nonsense. Now, let's get into why this Mercury retrograde came for all of our emotions. You see, this wasn't the usual Mercury retrograde, where your phone glitches, your flight gets delayed, and you accidentally text the wrong person. Yeah, and that could have still happened, but that's not what this Mercury retrograde was about. You see, Mercury has been moving backward through Cancer, and Cancer rules your emotions. Memories, family, home, safety, and the parts of your past that still live inside you. So the disruption wasn't only happening around you, it was happening inside you. And the angels are saying this retrograde brought old emotions forward because you were finally ready to see what was still affecting you. Not so you could suffer through it again. No. So you could stop carrying it into places where it no longer belongs. Like old memories resurfaced without warning. Family issues became loud, very loud. People from the past returned, or you found yourself thinking about someone you haven't thought about in years. Conversations felt more personal. Small comments hit deeper than they normally would. You may have been more sensitive, more emotional, or completely exhausted by feelings you just couldn't explain. So it's like this. Cancer doesn't just hear the words being said. No, Cancer remembers every feeling that's attached to them. And that is why something happening today may have triggered an emotional reaction connected to something that happened like 10 years ago. You weren't necessarily responding only to the present moment. Your nervous system recognized an old feeling like rejection, abandonment, betrayal, feeling like you're being overlooked or not feeling safe, or always feel like you have to take care of everyone while nobody ever noticed what you needed or valued what you were doing. You see, Mercury retrograde asks us to put everything into a review. And in Cancer, it asks us to review our emotional history. So your angels were not asking you to reopen every wound or reconnect with everyone from your past. No, they were showing you which experiences still influence the way you communicate, how you react to things, trust, and how you actually protect yourself now. And you may have noticed yourself replaying these conversations, thinking about what you should have said, wondering whether someone misunderstood you, or questioning relationships you normally feel really secure about, or you feel really secure in. Well, here's the deal. Wanting reinsurance but not wanting to ask for it, something we got to talk about. And the angels are saying, stop expecting people to understand what you refuse to communicate. You do not need to over-explain yourself, though, but you do need to be honest about what you need. And some of you felt unusually nostalgic, too. You wanted to return to an old home or an old relationship, an old friendship, or even an old version of your life. But here's the deal. Nostalgia is very selective, and it remembers the comfort and quietly edits out the reason you left or closed that door or that chapter. And this retrograde wasn't necessarily telling you to go backwards. It was asking you to look backwards with clearer eyes. And there is a difference because people from the past often return during Mercury retrograde because there is unfinished communication. But unfinished does not always mean unfinished love. Sometimes the unfinished business is your decision to stop abandoning yourself for that connection. And sometimes they come back so that you can see that you no longer want what once consumed you. And the angels may allow an old connection to cross your path again and again and again. But that does not mean they send it back for you to keep it. Sometimes it returns so you can make a different decision. And sometimes nobody physically returns, but the memory does. And guess what? Unfortunately, that still counts. The person doesn't need to text you for the energy of the situation to be reviewed. Your mind may suddenly bring it forward because you are finally capable of understanding it differently. Yeah, fun times. And your angels can use a memory just as easily as they can use a conversation. So pay attention to what keeps coming back, internally or externally. There's information there. But that does not mean there is an invitation for them to return. No. In fact, big no. You see, family dynamics were especially intense too during this retrograde because Cancer rules family, childhood, motherhood, and the emotional environment we were raised in. And old roles may have returned. Think about it. How many of you relate to this or felt like this was your role in your family? Being the responsible one, the constant peacemaker, the outsider, the child who is expected to understand everyone else, the person who fixes everything, the one who keeps it quiet because telling the truth would disturb the family or maybe leave them vulnerable or exposed. And you may be an adult with your own home and your own money and your own life, but one conversation with the right family member or one memory coming up can make you feel 12 years old again. That's Cancer. And the angels are saying you are not required to keep playing the role your family assigned to you. Because you can love people without managing your emotions or their expectations of you. And you can protect your peace without explaining the boundary 20 different ways and 20 different times. You see, this retrograde exposed the places where your current reactions are still being directed by an older version of you. Not because you are weak, because emotional patterns can become automatic when they have been practiced for years, if not your entire life. And your angels brought your attention to the pattern because you now have the power to interrupt it, right? You're in the driver's seat. And Mercury retrograde wasn't the only thing making this feel so intense, by the way. Because Uranus entered Gemini on July 7th. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so this added a sharp electric quality to everything involving communication and the mind. Racing thoughts, sudden information, unexpected conversations, trouble concentrating, feeling overstimulated, and mentally exhausted all at the same time. You may have struggled to sleep because your body was tired, but your mind refused to shut up. You may have jumped from one thought to another, constantly checking your phone, or felt as though something was about to happen without knowing what. Now, that wasn't necessarily your intuition warning you about disaster. Sometimes it was simply an overloaded nervous system trying to process too much information. The angels are asking you to know the difference between divine guidance and fear. Guidance is clear. Fear repeats itself until it gets your attention. And your angels do not need to frighten you to prepare you. Now, what's also going on is that Neptune also stationed retrograde on July 7th. Now, Neptune rules your dreams, your intuition, your illusions, and the fantasies and the stories we tell ourselves when the truth is uncomfortable. But when Neptune turns retrograde, the fantasy can begin to dissolve. And you may have seen someone more clearly. You may have realized that you were holding on to potential instead of reality. You may have recognized that a situation wasn't confusing at all. You simply didn't like the answer it was giving you. Now, that clarity can be emotional. It can feel like grief, even when it is protecting you. You're not only releasing a person or a situation, you're releasing the version of the future you imagined around it. And your angels are saying that losing that fantasy is not the same as losing what was meant for you. Now, if the truth removes something from your life, the truth is doing its job. Pluto was also in retrograde, in Aquarius, bringing hidden resentment and power dynamics to the surface. Friendships, communities, audiences, and group relationships may have felt different. You may have noticed where you were shrinking to remain accepted, over-explaining yourself to avoid being misunderstood, or tolerating behavior because you didn't want to lose your place. And then Jupiter opposed Pluto around July 20th, making everything feel large, very large. Jupiter expands whatever it touches, and Pluto exposes what has been buried. Feelings that had been manageable suddenly became impossible to ignore. Small disagreements revealed larger issues. A minor frustration showed you where resentment had been building for months. The angels are saying the situation did not suddenly become a problem. You simply reached the point where you could no longer pretend it wasn't one. That doesn't mean every emotional reaction was perfectly accurate. Intense feelings can contain truth without telling the entire truth. And the feeling may be real, but the story your mind attaches to it can still be wrong. Someone taking longer to answer does not automatically mean they are abandoning you. A difficult conversation does not automatically mean a relationship is ending. Feeling insecure does not mean you are unsafe. Mercury retrograde in Cancer blurred the line between what was happening now and what happened before. That is why this period required discernment. Now, ask your angels to show you what is actually true. Then ask yourself, what happened? What did I assume? What part of my reaction belongs to this moment? And what part belongs to an older experience? Those questions separate intuition from emotional memory. Real intuition is usually very clean. It gives you information without forcing you into panic. Emotional memory is much louder. It demands immediate action because it believes the past is happening. And what Archangel Michael is saying is that you are protected enough to pause. You do not need to react immediately to prove that you are powerful. Give yourself time to see the situation clearly before you decide what it means. If you reacted emotionally during this retrograde, don't waste time punishing yourself either. Look at what the reaction revealed. What were you afraid of losing? Where did you feel dismissed? What did you need but refused to say? Who were you expecting to read your mind? Where were you trying to look unbothered while quietly building resentment? That is the information this retrograde brought forward. Mercury turns direct on July 23rd. Tomorrow. I'm filming this on the 22nd. But that does not mean everything changes at midnight. Mercury remains in its post-retrograde shadow until August 6th. During that time, it moves across the same degrees of Cancer for the third and final time. The first pass introduced the situation. The retrograde brought it back for a review. The final pass, or the shadow period, reveals what you understand now. So watch what returns between July 23rd and August 6th. A conversation may continue. Missing information may appear. Someone may explain themselves finally. You may finally understand why a certain situation affected you so deeply. You may also realize that you don't need another conversation because you have enough information to make your own decision now. Ask your angels for confirmation, but do not ignore the answer simply because it arrives differently than you expected. Confirmation is not always another sign telling you to stay. Sometimes it is the peace you feel when you decide to leave it alone. Closure is not always something another person gives you. Sometimes closure is recognizing the pattern and refusing to repeat it. Mercury turns direct July 23rd, but the shadow remains until August 6th. And the emotions begin to settle, but whatever this retrograde exposed still requires your attention. And it didn't come back to punish you. And your angels brought it back because you are no longer meant to carry it the same way. So, let's fucking go. As always, I'm Kate the Angelic Assassin. If this resonated with you or helped you in any way, please like, share, comment below, and let me know exactly what was revealed to you during this retrograde and what you plan on doing about it below. And as always, if you want exclusive content, daily tarot guidance, then be sure to sign up and become an Angel Baddie. It's an incredibly powerful and awesome community that we are all building together, and I couldn't be more proud of it. As always, I love you. Your angels always have your back, and Archangel Michael is guiding your way.